Claire Bennett had always been the strange thread in her family's finely knit tapestry. In the Bennett household, an immense Georgian estate in Buckhead, Atlanta, image was everything. Her parents, Charles and Evelyn Bennett, were well known for their extravagant garden parties, white glove galas, and immaculate contacts in Southern society. Her older brother Nathan, the family's pride, had followed the expected route with textbook precision. An Ivy League degree, a corner office in the family's real estate development firm by age 28, and a picture-perfect fiancée from a good family called Caroline. Claire, on the other hand, had always been known as the creative one, which in her family was a polite euphemism for the disappointment. She wasn't defiant, just different. Introverted, artistic, more likely to appear in worn jeans and paint-splattered sneakers than in pearls and pastel skirts. She had strange notions, according to her mother, and a habit of asking unpleasant questions over meals. While Nathan spoke about financial portfolios and land acquisition tactics, Claire discussed lighting, textures, and how spaces made people feel. Her parents rarely listened to her, or if they did, they disregarded her thoughts as fanciful nonsense. The sitting arrangement for Sunday dinners was always the same. Nathan sat to their father's right, as heir in every sense. Claire was seated across from Aunt Lydia, who mainly discussed her poodle's food sensitivities. When Claire tried to bring up her most recent freelancing project or a new client pitch, her mother would grin firmly and switch the conversation to someone else's wedding, baby, or renovation. She remembered her mother's voice from a particularly depressing evening. "Claire, dear, why don't you use all of your design enthusiasm to plan Nathan's engagement party? At the very least, it would be useful." Useful. That word ached more than Claire wanted to acknowledge. Claire's family had no idea, because they had never asked, that she had created something considerably more serious than a few Pinterest theme boards. What began in her college dorm room, constructing study lounges for school buildings, grew into something powerful. By the age of 25, she had co-founded Bennett and Gray, an interior architectural and boutique design business specializing in high-end restorations of luxury spaces. Ava Gray, her co-founder and best friend from design school, oversaw the firm's publicity and press. Claire chose to stay in the background. She had no desire to be a figurehead. She wanted to build quietly, perfectly, and without the distraction of her family's inspection. Bennett and Gray had quietly established themselves as one of the Southeast's most sought-after firms in just 5 years. Their name appeared on everything from refurbished penthouses in Nashville to a historic hotel in Savannah. They collaborated with financiers, developers, and hospitality moguls, some of whom were directly competing with her father's company. Nonetheless, Claire never informed her family. Not because she intended to deceive people, but it was easier than dealing with their skepticism, or worse, arrogant adulation when they realized they had underestimated her. Everything changed with a single email. It arrived on a frigid Tuesday morning in early March, shortly after Claire returned from a site inspection in Charleston. Her phone buzzed with a notification from her mother's personal email account, which was only used for family correspondence. The subject line was simple: Nathan's engagement, save the date. Claire opened the message and skimmed the too formal text. "Your brother's engagement party will be on April 15th. We are looking into other venues, but it will most likely be at the Monroe Estate. Very exclusive. If you can afford to come, please RSVP by the 20th. Claire, please refrain from wearing anything inventive. You know how photographs last forever." Evelyn's tone contained no animosity, at least not obviously. It was just her style, a tone tinged with slick contempt and mindless arrogance. But Claire's heart stopped when she saw the venue's name: the Monroe Estate. She didn't just know the location, she had nearly rebuilt it. A hesitant investor had brought the Monroe, a deteriorating 1920s mansion set behind wrought iron gates and a line of oak trees, to Claire's attention 2 years ago. Its bones were stunning: authentic Art Deco fixtures, hand-carved balustrades, and imported French marble. But it was falling apart.
Most saw a money pit. Claire saw an empire about to be reborn. When the investor withdrew, Claire did something she'd never told anyone, not Ava or her crew. She took money from her private account, formed a dummy business, and secretly bought the estate. For 18 months, she monitored every aspect of its renovation. Her vision revitalized the Monroe estate, from the hand-pressed silk wallpaper in the bridal suite to the 22-foot chandelier flown in from Italy for the grand ballroom. It debuted discreetly 6 months ago, positioned as the Southeast's most exclusive private event space, and now her family was arranging a party there, not realizing it was hers. Claire stood in the center of her apartment that evening, the RSVP card fluttering slightly in her hand as a spring breeze blew through the window. They had no idea. Her family still thought she got by on design gigs, that she rented her small yet elegant loft. They believed she needed their direction, approval, or empathy. And now they were going to enter a place she had created. She had built the place herself, using her own hands, her vision, her money. Entering her office, she examined the estate's calendar and discovered that Bennett engagement, scheduled for April 15th, had a pending confirmation notation. Claire looked at it for a long time. She might cancel the reservation. She may also take a step back and let them party in their ignorance. But a third idea took root. She had never given it any thought before. Perhaps it was time they discovered who she really was. And perhaps it was time to stop allowing them to write her story for her.
Claire did not sleep that night. Her mind was brimming with potential, not because she was anxious. For the first time in years, she felt in control of the family dynamics, not out of vengeance or anger, but because she had built it herself. And now she had the chance to recover her position at the table without having to beg for recognition. By sunrise, she was in her home office, barefoot and still wearing her enormous cashmere sweater, with a hot mug of black tea beside her, plotting how it would all play out. She was not going to just confess the truth. She was about to show it, exactly, methodically, and on her own terms. First, she called Ava. "What's going on?" Ava inquired, weary from the West Coast time difference. "You never call this early unless you've found a lighting fixture that makes you cry." "I have a situation," Claire explained, a smile pulling on her lips. "My family is throwing Nathan's engagement party at the Monroe." Silence. A moment later, "Wait, the Monroe? "Yes, our Monroe." "Do they know?" "Not a clue," Claire answered, picking up the RSVP card and tapping it against her hand. "My mother even advised me not to wear something unique." "Oh," Ava sighed, clearly alert now. "This is a rom-com climax in the making." Claire laughed. "For the time being, I'd like to keep my ownership private. Allow them to arrive and take everything in. I want to see them admire what they never thought I was capable of." "And then what?" "I will expose it when the time is perfect, after they've seen what I've created, when it's impossible to ignore." Whistle. You're going for full Succession surprise. I love it. Do you need help? "I want the staff to treat me like a VIP, but not the VIP. No hints, there are no winks, there are no slips. Could you brief them?" "Done. They will regard you as just another high-profile guest until you are ready." Claire focused on logistics now that Ava had joined her team. She sent an email to her event organizer, Elise, outlining a list of personalized party enhancements that she would personally cover. There's a live jazz quintet in the garden. The ballroom now features an improved champagne tower, and a customized dinner included her father's favorite bourbon-glazed filet and her mother's favorite French dessert, eel flottante. Elise responded within an hour, perplexed but compliant. "I thought the client had a tight budget." Claire replied simply, "Discreet compensation. I will absorb any overages. Simply make it perfect," and silence. She overviewed the seating arrangement her mother had submitted. Claire, of course, had been assigned to the far end of the table, next to extended cousins. Instead, she took a prime seat across from the groom-to-be, citing a flow decision for photos. It was petty. She let herself make one minor adjustment. Claire scheduled a meeting with her stylist the next week. "I want understated," said Sabine, a French-Algerian designer who had dressed half of the women at the Atlanta galas, but lethal. Sabine lifted her eyebrow. A message outfit, then. Exactly. It should read, "I don't need to show off because I own the room, but also, look again. You missed something the first time." Sabine's grin became sly. "I have just the thing." The day of the engagement party arrived with a warm April sun and a breeze scented by newly blooming dogwood trees. Claire wore a fitted ivory jumpsuit with a dramatic cape sleeve, minimalist, architectural, and designed to command attention without asking for it. Her hair was curled into a low knot, and her makeup was precise and purposeful. She entered the Monroe through the service wing, which she had used numerous times during building and planning, rather than the grand entry like the rest of the guests had. Familiar people greeted her with knowing smiles and professional demeanor. "Are you ready?" Elise inquired, passing her a glass of champagne. Claire sipped and nodded. "Let's begin the show." She crept silently around the ballroom, hidden behind the broad staircase that overlooked the main hall. Her relatives arrived as she observed from her vantage point. Her mother arrived first, dressed in blush silk and immediately fussing over floral arrangements. She admired the mirrored place cards and monogrammed linens, obviously impressed yet dubious. Her father followed, studying the hardwood inlay beneath his shoes with the air of a man determining the value per square foot. Nathan, tall, charming, and slightly smug, arrived with Caroline on his arm and a group of well-dressed friends. Claire remained unseen. As they visited the mansion, she observed her mother compliment the lighting, her brother chuckle at the grandeur of the restrooms, "It's like a spa in there," and her father bend over to whisper to a friend. Whoever owned this establishment knew exactly what they were doing. Flawless restoration. And she felt it. Not just satisfaction, but serenity. They saw it. They loved it. They had no idea it was hers. For now. Claire didn't arrive until the champagne was flowing and the guests were comfortably seated for cocktail hour. She timed it perfectly, not so early that her presence became background noise, and not so late that it appeared premeditated. Just enough to pique curiosity. She walked gently down the staircase, heels clicking against the marble, the soft ivory of her jumpsuit capturing the golden light streaming through the stained glass windows. Heads turned. Conversation ceased, not in recognition, but in response to the energy she conveyed. Controlled, unapologetic, effortless. Her mother noticed her first. "Claire?" Evelyn blinked twice, as if wondering if it was her daughter sliding toward the crowd like she was born into it, rather than floundering at its borders. Claire smiled. "Hi, Mom." "You are early, and you look—" She trailed off, her gaze drawn to the form of the jumpsuit and the sparkling diamond cuff on Claire's wrist. "Different." "It's a special occasion. This is Nathan's big night. I figured I'd make an effort." Evelyn gave a faint smile, clearly torn between pride and confusion. Before she could continue, Nathan appeared. "Well, look who actually showed up. You clean up nice." Claire offered her hand to Caroline. "Congratulations again. You are glowing." "Thank you. This place is beautiful. I cannot believe I have never been here before. Your mother said it just reopened." Claire nodded. "Last spring. It took several years to restore." Caroline sighed. "It's flawless. Each detail." "Thank you," Claire replied quietly. Before anyone could respond, Elise approached with professionalism and composure. "Miss Bennett," Should asked subtly, "would you like me to confirm the final timeline with the quartet before the toast?" Nathan blinked. "Miss Bennett?" Claire made a little bend toward Elise. "Yes, please.
Ask Diego to decant the wine for the second course right now. I'll introduce them during the toast. Elise offered a subtle nod and departed. Wait! Evelyn replied, her eyes narrowing. Why are you talking to the event coordinator like that? Claire faced her entire family now, mother, brother, father, and fiancé, whose expressions were alternating between wonder and skepticism. Because I'm the owner of the Monroe estate. Silence. For a moment, it appeared that the entire room was holding its breath. Your what? Nathan's laughter faltered. Claire spoke clearly and convincingly. The property. This business. I purchased it. I restored it. I chose every archway, chandelier, and velvet-backed chair in the ballroom. I run it. Her father, Charles, moved forward, his face wrinkled. This is your company. Claire nodded. I own the Monroe, with my design firm, Bennett and Gray. Ava handles public relations. I am the chief designer and majority stockholder. You! Evelyn's voice cracked slightly. You're the one behind this? Claire looked her mother directly in the eyes. Yes, I've been working on this for several years. Quietly. You assumed I was decorating apartments or waiting tables. But how? You've never mentioned anything. Because whenever I tried, you dismissed it. You laughed at my suggestions. You advised me to find a genuine job. So I've stopped telling you. I allow my work to speak for itself. The moment was tense, electrifying, and uncertain. Caroline was the first to shatter it. Claire, this is incredible. I had no idea. Most people didn't, Claire stated, scanning the room. Guests began to notice the crowd near the enormous staircase. Conversations had slowed, and all eyes were watching. Claire, however, felt no shame, only control. She wasn't concealing anything anymore. Her father had finally found his voice. You mean to tell me this? He indicated the marble flooring, hand-carved moldings, and 30-foot ceilings. All of this was you. All of this is me, Claire murmured gently. And it's just the beginning. Elise reappeared with the quartet's timeline and stepped in with grace. Miss Bennett, shall we escort guests to the ballroom for the toast? Claire turned to our relatives. I think it's time to celebrate, don't you? Evelyn did not move. Why would you hide this from us? Claire's response was calm and almost polite. I did not hide it. You never asked, and I stopped having to explain myself to those who wouldn't listen. With that, she turned and followed Elise into the ballroom, leaving her family in stunned silence. Claire was received as the double doors opened, not as someone's daughter or sister, but as a woman in control of the room, the moment, and her tale. And this was just the beginning. The toasts came and went, the champagne flutes clinked, and Nathan's engagement party proceeded with practiced elegance. But under the surface, attention persisted. Claire stood toward the front of the ballroom, casually speaking with a local arts foundation director with whom she had recently collaborated on a grant proposal, yet she could sense them lingering. Her family. I am observing her, recalculating. She caught a glimpse of their faces between chats. Her mother, Evelyn, sat stiffly at a corner table, a fixed smile pulled too tight as she nodded along to a guest's narrative, her gaze returning to Claire every few seconds. Her father, Charles, appeared perplexed rather than outraged, as if he had just discovered a secret door in the house he had built himself. Nathan disappeared after the toast. Claire wasn't sure whether that was better or worse. It wasn't until nearly an hour later, as dessert plates were cleared and the jazz quintet switched to gentler ballads, that he approached her, hands in his pockets and lips squeezed flat. So you own the Monroe? Claire nodded, her demeanor remaining neutral. Yes. Nathan peered around the ballroom, his gaze drawn to the fresco ceiling she had made to match the building's original 1924 concept. This place is unreal, he confessed. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Claire stated kindly. I didn't tell you to humiliate you. He shakes his head. It is not that, it's only, I guess I assumed you were still freelance. Creating mood boards for Airbnbs or something. Claire laughed softly, but not unkindly. Because that's all you were told. He met her gaze. Is this about Mom and Dad? It's about everything, she said quietly. I've spent years being the second choice. It wasn't even a decision I made. Do you think I didn't want to share my story with you? I did. I shared this with you numerous times. However, it always felt as though I needed to prove my worth before anyone would take me seriously. Nathan did not argue. For once, he just listened. Finally, he said, I should have asked more. Claire offered a faint smile. It would have helped. He nodded slowly and then looked at Evelyn and Charles. Mom's spiraling. Of course she is, Claire shrugged. I shattered her version of who I was. Nathan gave a lopsided smile. It's really astounding, to be honest. You have Dad pacing the patio, Mom speechless, and half the visitors trying to figure out how to pronounce Bennett and Gray. Claire lifted her eyebrow. Is that your version of a compliment? Maybe. His grin grew wider. Okay, yes, you have created something real. And to be honest, I am a little jealous. Claire tilted her head. You run a multi-million-dollar development firm. Nathan shrugged. Yes, but I inherited it. You built yours, on your own. That's different. The comment astonished her. It was the most sincere statement Nathan had ever made to her. No sarcasm, no sibling competition. There is only the truth. Thanks, she replied gently. He gave her shoulder a little squeeze. Don't be a stranger, okay? You don't have to do this alone anymore. And with that, he returned to Caroline, who was talking with one of Claire's culinary staff about the special lemon mousse. Her father found her later in the evening, when most of the visitors had left and the ballroom had returned to a quiet hum of laughter and clinking dishes. Charles stood with her in the garden atrium, staring up at the string lights she had chosen to replicate the warmth of gaslight without causing fire code violations. You're not the same girl who left the city 5 years ago, he told her. Claire did not respond immediately. Instead, she let the quiet sit between them, like an unopened letter. I suppose that's part of the problem, he added. I could still see you through that lens. The impulsive one. The dreamer. And now? She asked, without looking at him. Now I see a woman who has accomplished something I couldn't. This place is truly remarkable. It isn't just masonry and chandeliers. It's a vision. Soul. That is something I have never had in my development. Claire turned to face him. I never needed you to get it. I only needed you to respect it. Charles nodded slowly. I'm working on that. That was enough, for now. Her mother did not approach Claire until the very end, after the final staff debrief and after Claire had thanked the musicians and confirmed that all of the guests had transportation home. Evelyn emerged in the ballroom doorway like a ghost from another century, poised and unreadable. I suppose you're proud of yourself? She stated bluntly. I'm proud of what I've built, yes. You ambushed us. No, Claire responded steadily. You invited yourself into my universe. I just let you see the truth. Evelyn's voice wavered. You could have told us. I tried, for years. You just weren't listening. Her mask slipped for a minute, just a crack. Her hands curled around the clutch. This changes things. I hope so, Claire replied quietly, because I won't pretend to be small anymore just to make you comfortable. They stood there, two women divided by perspective rather than time, one clinging to an outdated form of control, the other finally standing in her full truth. I suppose we'll need to talk, Evelyn remarked. Claire nodded. We will, but not tonight. She turned and walked away. The ballroom door closed quietly behind her. This was not the death of her family, but rather the end of her silence. Claire sat on her sun-drenched balcony, sipping Earl Grey, her phone ringing with unanswered messages. The majority were from family. Some came as guests. One article came from a local society columnist who had somehow learned about the party's surprise twist. Ava had previously identified it as a non-story and closed it down, but it was not Claire's top priority. She glanced through the messages, her mother's missed calls, Nathan's text that simply said, "Lunch?" and her father's email with the subject line, "I owe you a better conversation." She did not answer any of them quickly. Instead, she opened her notes app and started writing something she never imagined she'd need. Claire's Personal Boundary Guidelines, Family Edition. Not for drama, not for vengeance. To protect. For the first time in her life, Claire was no longer the neglected sibling, the neglected daughter, or the underappreciated artist. She was the proprietor of one of Atlanta's most elite venues, the driving force behind a burgeoning design business, and a woman who was no longer willing to shrink herself to make others feel comfortable. By lunchtime, she had completed a working draft. It was straightforward. She no longer discounted her professional accomplishments. There are no analogies between her and Nathan. No commercial demands or favors from relatives without official bids. There were no unexpected visits to Monroe's home or studio. Above all, respect her time, labor, and judgments. She printed 2 copies. She printed 1 copy for her parents. She also printed 1 copy for herself. Claire met her father for coffee at 2:30 p.m. in a quiet cafe nestled away in a midtown corner, which was neutral territory. When she arrived, he was already seated with his jacket off, sleeves rolled up, and 2 lattes on the table. "I wasn't sure how you take yours," the gentleman said. Claire lifted her eyebrow. "After 32 years?" He chuckled sheepishly. "Fair." They spent the next hour talking. They conversed not as fathers and daughters, but as 2 professionals. Charles confirmed what Claire had believed all along. He had not taken her profession seriously because he didn't understand it. For years, he considered creativity to be a luxury rather than a basis. His definition of success was limited and secure. "You didn't fit the mold," he explained, "and that scared me." Claire nodded. "I never wanted to be the mold." At the conclusion of the conversation, he slid his phone across the table. On the screen was a draft email to the board of a local development project requesting that Bennett and Gray submit an interior design concept for their next property. Claire read it. "Professional tone," she added with a sneer. "Nice touch." "You don't have to say yes," he clarified immediately. "I just wanted to let you know that I finally see it. Your work, your talent, the immensity of what you've created. It was not simply words, it was action." She snatched the phone, pressed send, and handed it back. "Then let's see what happens," she added. Later the following week, Evelyn appeared at the Monroe with an appointment. Jackson, the floor manager, greeted her at the entrance with professionalism and courtesy. She was led into Claire's office, where a plate of tea and macarons awaited, not as a peace offering, but as a courteous reminder. "This is my domain. You are currently a guest here." Her mother's tone seemed clipped at first, defensive. Like a cat in a new room, she circled the office, examining the design choices, framed press articles, and a portrait of Claire with her first Monroe construction crew. "I underestimated you," Evelyn finally admitted. Claire did not glance up from her tea. "Yes, you did. I don't like being blindsided. You were not caught off guard. You have been notified. Finally." Evelyn sat with her posture still straight and her hands clutched in her lap. "I've been thinking about what you mentioned regarding not being asked, about being unheard." She looked down at her tea. "I suppose I've spent most of your existence attempting to shape you into someone I recognize. It was a more secure way than discovering your true identity." "And now," Claire asked, Her gaze lifted. For once, we are vulnerable. Now, I'd like to learn. That's all Claire needed. Claire did not require an emotional apology. This is not performative praise. This is just the beginning. They spoke for 2 hours. They discussed topics that weren't particularly serious at the time, but enough. By the end, Evelyn had gone into her purse and taken out a folded paper. Claire opened it to discover a guest list for an upcoming charity dinner that Evelyn was planning. Would you like to be on the planning committee? Not for design. Not as a seller, as a voice. Claire smiled. I'd like that. And with that, something changed. Not everything came back to normal, but the dynamic was no longer stagnant. Stephanie arrived next. Instead of apologizing, she arrived with a cautious curiosity and a cup of coffee. Okay, she said, offering Claire a latte. So how exactly does someone buy a property like the Monroe without anyone noticing? Claire laughed. Are you asking me this as a sister or as a lawyer? Some of both, Stephanie conceded. They sat in Claire's rooftop garden, the aroma of lavender wafting between them. I was jealous, she finally admitted. I still am, honestly. You have figured it out on your own. Claire sipped her coffee. I did not need to outdo you. I just wanted to cease participating in a game that I wasn't invited to. Stephanie did not argue. She simply nodded. Claire extended a modest olive branch. There will be a charitable event next quarter. We will need a legal assessment of the contracts. Do you want to have a look? Stephanie blinked. Seriously? We are sisters. This does not mean that we cannot be colleagues, so long as we keep the lines clear. Stephanie grinned. Deal. Claire's family did not change overnight, but they started to evolve. More importantly, so did Claire. She stopped shrinking. She stopped explaining. She gave up waiting for validation. Her triumph was always real. However, people are now recognizing her triumph. The Monroe estate thrived. Bennett and Gray grew. What about Claire Bennett? She lived not for recognition, but for truth. She lived for the full, peaceful, and beautiful truth. The loudest revolution doesn't always revolve around seeking revenge. It's deciding to stand tall at a place they said you'd never reach.
The Monroe estate was drenched in late spring sunlight, and its ivy-covered walls have become a defining backdrop for Atlanta's most prestigious galas and fundraisers. In the courtyard, lavender flowered in meat rows alongside marble fountains, one of Claire's more lavish design decisions, now memorialized in bridal publications as the Bennett aesthetic. Claire stood by the edge of the rooftop garden, sipping a cold glass of sparkling elderflower, watching her staff prepare for the evening's event, the Thompson Bennett Foundation's one-year anniversary gala, which she had co-founded to promote young women in creative entrepreneurship. She donned a dove-gray silk dress with a modest form, but an undeniable commanding presence. The woman exudes serene grace. A year ago, this very rooftop served as the backdrop for the night her family finally saw her. Now, it served as the foundation for something far greater: legacy. Her business had expanded almost too quickly for her to keep up with. Bennett and Gray had created a second office in Charleston and were in talks to transform Asheville's historic train station into a boutique hotel. Her designs were being featured in national newspapers, and Ava was receiving inquiries from television producers about a docuseries. Claire had turned most of them down. Fame was not her objective. The impact was. How was her relationship with her family? Still imperfect, but certainly better. Her father now contacted her once a month, not to give her advice, but to ask for it. Her mother, Evelyn, still wore her pearls too tightly and her pride too loudly, but Claire had learned to hear the meaning beneath her words.
She even mentioned Claire's charity in a recent speech at her country club, describing her daughter as a visionary. Progress took weird shapes. And Stephanie? They were not excellent friends, but they were honest. Their dynamic had changed from competitive to cautious support. Claire now advised on the firm's office renovation, and Stephanie had held a women-in-law networking event at the Monroe without requesting a sister discount. Claire respected that. Her personal life had also transformed. His name was Marcus Reed. They had met while working on the Charleston project. He was a structural engineer who insisted on revising the load calculations on a 19th century ballroom that Claire refused to yield on. At first, they argued. They then collaborated. They kissed one evening while drinking bourbon and discussing plans. It was not a whirlwind or a fairy tale. It was real. Claire's independence and empire did not pose a threat to Marcus. He admired it, and he brought his own vision and cadence, which was slower, steadier, and more grounded. Claire had not moved in with him. She hadn't labeled anything yet, but he'd be at the gala that evening, wearing the tie she had chosen and carrying the bouquet she hadn't requested, but usually enjoyed. She heard the familiar sound of Ava's heels hitting the stone behind her. The press is ready, the board is seated, and your mother is already making polite threats about the wine temperature. Claire laughed. So, everything's right on schedule. Ava grinned. Are you okay? Claire turned to face her city, her skyline, her world. I am more than fine. I am here, fully. No hiding, no shrinking. A pause. Remember a year ago? She inquired. I walked into this place with a plan to prove I belonged. Ava nodded. And now? Claire grinned warmly and confidently. Now, I don't have to prove anything. I have already built it. The sweet chime of the string quartet wafted up from below. Guests were arriving. They were turning on the lights. At the center of it all stood a lady who had once been the quiet girl at the dinner table, but was now recognized as the name behind the empire. Claire backed away from the railing, handed her drink to a passing waitress, and headed for the stairs. The evening, as well as her future, awaited.